Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guest is L.A. Marzulli. Before I bring him on, I got to tell you about My Patriot Supply. They are the experts in emergency preparedness, and right now we're at a crazy time in our modern history here. We have a very unsure future, and it really couldn't hurt to have an emergency food supply. Right now, you can get $70 off a 2-week supply and $100 off a 4-week supply of their awesome food. It stays good in storage for up to 25 years. I've got my 4-week supply. I feel much better about it. Just visit preparewithfkn.com or click the link in the description to get your supply today. Also, subscribe to Forbidden Knowledge News on lbry.tv. It's our official backup channel, and we have a brand new show called Beyond Classified, exclusively on Rokfin. Rokfin is awesome. It is an amazing new platform. There's so many content creators there along with us. All of our regular Forbidden Knowledge News episodes also go there as well. And finally, Forbidden Knowledge NewsCon 2021 will now be held exclusively on Rokfin. That means you can attend the entire conference April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, which is next weekend, with 12 awesome presenters for only $10. But if you decide to keep the Rokfin subscription, you not only get our premium shows and regular shows, but all the premium shows from all the amazing content creators that are there with us. Just visit forbiddenknowledge.news to check out the lineup for the conference and sign up at rokfin.com/FKN Plus, or just click the link down there in the description and sign up today. You don't want to miss this conference. It's going to be awesome. And that's next week. It's coming right up. So sign up today. Tonight, I want to welcome back to the show L.A. Marzulli. He's an author, lecturer, and filmmaker. He has penned 8 books, including the Nephilim trilogy, which made the CBA bestsellers list. He received an honorary doctorate from the series from his mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, who was the provost at Pacific International University. His book, On the Trail of the Nephilim, Definitive Proof of Biblical Giants, is a full-color, oversized book which uncovers startling evidence that there has been a massive cover-up of what he believes are the remains of Nephilim, the giants mentioned in the Bible. He has taken on the trail of the Nephilim and created a film series that continues his research with interviews from people in their specific field of knowledge. L.A., welcome back. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Chris. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome back. Last time you were on, we discussed a little bit about some ancient mound builders, their purpose of the mounds, and some of the mysteries surrounding them. And we briefly touched on the significance of your research regarding the elongated skulls. Tonight, I really want to dig deeper into that, discuss some more about what those beings were. You believe that they were the Nephilim written about in the Bible in the book of Enoch. I also would like to get into, if we have time, about a bit about the incident at Fatima. Also your thoughts on the modern day UFO phenomenon, which we were discussing briefly before the show, and a little bit about the possibility of which you might consider biblical prophecy unfolding today. We've got a lot to talk about. First, let's start with what you were telling me that you were working on earlier. It sounded like you had some really interesting stuff upcoming.
We've got the new book, Countermove, How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood, is now available. People are reading it, and we're getting a lot of good response. It was probably one of the hardest books I've written. By the way, it's number 13. I've written 13 books. Somehow that's an old. I don't know where you're getting that from. I gotta talk to Michelle, and I know it's not on the website.
Oh, yeah. She gave me a bio, I guess.
But it's 13 books, and that's number 13. It's probably the hardest book I've ever written. It took 2 years in the making, and it's under 300 pages. The warfare on that book was unbelievable. The pulling and pushing and changing, and thank God for Sonda Allison, my editor. She was really a stalwart through the entire process and enabled us to get to the finish line. But that's available, and people are reading it. I'm getting a lot of good feedback from people emailing me. Episode 7 in On the Trail of the Nephilim, which is a little over an hour long, will probably be available in about 3 or 4 weeks, probably the end of April, towards the end of April. It's over at Doug Diamond, who does all of our mixing with the sounds, and he also color corrects everything. In other words, like as a director, I'm watching this, and editor. So I'm wearing all these hats, right? I'm a storyteller, the director. I write all the music. It's like a one-trick pony deal. Okay, I'm doing everything. But when it gets to the finish line, it's like, no. So I hand Doug Diamond, thank God, all the music, the effects, the dialogue. He mixes everything. Then I watch it. Sometimes he'll duck the effects a little too low. No, you got to. I want to hear that explosion, Doug. He does a great job, and he also color corrects it again for the same reason, because some of these clips I'll watch 50 times, and he just can't. So I get it's just dribbling at your ear. It's like, you deal with it. So anyway, he'll get that over to disc makers, and then we'll be shipping them. We are doing a pre-sale on it, $5 off the hard copy. That's lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. That's the website. But yeah, so I mean, those two things are available, and then I'm working on part 2 of Lost Civilizations. That's what episode 7 is. Lost Civilizations, episode 1. And I mean, it's bizarre. We go all over the place. We film on the island of Malta, Norba, Italy, Mallorca, the island of Mallorca in the Mediterranean, Gilgal Raphaim in Israel, down in Peru, the ancient city of Corral. We're all over the place. And what we do is I think we bring a continuity. Something is going on. Like when we're on the island of Sicily, and Giorgio is our guide, and we're in the car, and I'm filming him in the car, and I'm asking him questions about the so-called temple to Diana, right? And sure enough, he spills the beans without realizing really what he's saying. He's going, well, it's really strange, LA. We on the island of Sicily where we are. There was child sacrifice, which is very controversial, but it was child sacrifice, and it says right on my tombstone, Tubal of the Phoenicians, and I cut right there, and I go to America Stonehenge, where with Kelsey Stone, and he's showing me all the artifacts that came out of the site. America Stonehenge is in Salem, New Hampshire, and I go, well, what's this one say? And Kelsey goes, oh, this is Iberian Punic. It was found by Robert Woodall and then translated by Dr. Barry Fell. And it's Iberian Punic. It reads right to left, and it says Tubal of the Canaanites in dedication. And I about fall out of my, I'm holding the Osmo because this is all B-roll. I'm holding the Osmo, and it became A-roll. And I go, what did you just say? And he goes, and he kind of laughs nervously. Tubal, the Canaanites in dedication. They knew nothing, with all due respect to Dennis and Kelsey and the whole crew. This is my wheelhouse. I've studied this stuff forever. So it's my wheelhouse. It's not their wheelhouse. And they don't know what they're sitting on. I mean, this is Tubal of the Canaanites. Are you flipping kidding me? What is that doing in New Hampshire? So I show that. I bring that up again. This was number 5 and number 4, America Stonehenge. We did 2 films there. The Canaanite Connection was number 4, and number 5, the Axis Mundi, the center of the world. And Kelsey Stone, in my opinion, and I'm not, this is not hyperbole, Kelsey Stone discovered the most important archaeological find of the 20th century, without doubt. 21st century, without doubt. It's actually in the 21st century. I think he found it in I'm going to guess, let me see, 2010, 2012, somewhere in there, okay? And it's an unbelievable discovery. And you could only do it if you have Google Earth. So we didn't have Google Earth 30 years ago, right?
Right.
You couldn't do it. So what he did, and we're on, I don't have a lot of props here, but I'll do my best. The center of their henge is here by this orange pencil. A henge is usually a circle. And America Stonehenge has a circle of standing stones all around it. So there's one here and then one there. And what they found out was these standing stones correlated to the summer solstice sunrise, the winter solstice sunrise, the equinoxes, lunar things, the whole deal. And you're gonna go, well, why are people doing this? These standing stones, Chris, they're in excess of 3 to 4 tons, and they're embedded into the ground. All right, so it becomes very problematic. So anyway, they knew this, that if they stood in the center of their henge, and looked out at the summer solstice standing stone, right, the sun would come up directly over that stone. They knew that. Okay. That was interesting. That's just 2 points.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I
So,
love about your research is you actually get out there to the sites and you get your hands dirty and see what's out there. Unlike some of the researchers that are research is great going over evidence, but it's unlike going out to a site. There's nothing like that.
remember the Indiana Jones film when he's in the library and he looks at the guy and he goes, "Get out of the library." It's
Right.
exactly, the books that you're reading came about for the most part because someone was out in the field and wrote about it. That's how it works. So, and I read stuff. I mean, I'm not discounting academia. It's important to bone up on stuff and read, find out what archaeologists say, what the mainstream thought is, and then make my own opinion once I'm there on the site. So Kelsey Stone is a college student at this point, and he goes on Google Earth and he cites the two standing stones, the summer solstice sunrise, and back here, the center of his head. He draws a line on Google Earth. So, like I said, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there was no Google Earth. So you can't do that. But Kelsey did it. So he does this line and he's wondering, gee, I wonder where it goes. So he draws it and it kind of goes over his house. He says, that's pretty cool. So he just keeps drawing a line. He's just fooling around. He's a college kid. Too much time in his hands. Don't we all have it, right?
Right.
And he draws the line further and he's out over the Atlantic past Nova Scotia and southern Ireland, goes through Ireland, and then he finds himself in southern England. And he knows he's kind of close to Salisbury Plain, Stonehenge, that whole area. So he goes, gee, I wonder if the line gets close to Stonehenge. So he starts scrolling in, zooming in, and to his absolute astonishment, the line goes directly through the center trilithon. It's like this. So you have two uprights, and then you have a lentil, the cross beam. It goes directly through not only one, but these things are canted like in a horseshoe. They're sort of at not right angles, but close to that. The line goes right through the center of both the lentils at Stonehenge, England. So now you've got 3 points. All right. And if you move that standing stone in America Stonehenge a foot either way, you would wind up 100 miles away. So we're looking at something which defies any explanation. It is not a coincidence. Something is going on here. And we know the site is 4,000 years old. So what we're looking at is technology that somehow was available 4,000 years ago. Well, we all know that until modernity, this technology was not available. And only in modernity are we able to do this type of sighting over thousands of miles because we can triangulate from the air, from satellites. So what's interesting about this is why we call it the Axis Mundi. And this is why I call it the most significant archaeological discovery of the 21st century. Hands down, nothing comes close because it points to something. Whoever did this, Chris, was able to do it. It ain't a coinkydink. And it shows the connectivity between America Stonehenge and Stonehenge, England. But it gets better. And I'm not going to, give away the farm here. Rent the stinking video for, under $4 or $5, streaming.la-marzulli.net, streaming.la-marzulli.net. But I'll give you one more deal. When they lined up the other standing stones on Google Earth and did the same thing, that's when it blew their minds. And it blew our mind. I mean, it's in the film. I just look at the camera and go, wow, Axis Mundi, the center of the world. One of the lines goes right into the heart of Machu Picchu in Peru. Are you flipping kidding me? So it is the most important archaeological discovery, in my opinion, of the 21st century. So your readers, well, why is that, LA? I mean, I don't understand that. Well, it shows that somebody is able to do this, and they shouldn't be able to do this. but they're doing it.
Especially in the time period that it was done.
It's impossible, absolutely impossible. Even 150 years ago. Let's say the site's a complete forgery and they did it 150 years ago. Sorry, guys, still won't work. So no matter what you say, something is going on here. And this is where it gets into my wheelhouse with fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. The Nephilim is a hybrid entity, the union between fallen angels and the women of earth, creating a hybrid being known as the Nephilim. This is fallen angel technology. Who is the prince of the power of the air? Another name for the dragon. That's who he is, prince of the power of the air. And his fingerprints are all over the planet. But all this is obfuscated. Why haven't the American people heard about this? Why
That's the big
is
question.
why is it that everybody who listens to this interview doesn't go and rent this thing and see it for themselves? What's wrong with these people? We're out there doing this thing. We're flailing our arms going, this is the most important archaeological discovery of the 21st century, and no one gives a flip, or very few people give a flip. It's like, just watch some stupid show on TV, play another video game. Everything is cool. Go back to sleep. It's just unbelievable.
Well, I'd like to hope my audience does care, and it'd be well worth it, the $4 or $5 to find out some of these mysteries here and what's behind it, because it's fascinating.
It keeps me on the trail. When we go to places like this, I've got a camera crew, I've got flights and lodging, and I love what I do. I can't wait to get out of here, but COVID has shut everything down. We want to go to points over in Europe, which I just can't wait to see. But, now with the COVID passport, we may never get there. We'll see.
Right. Yeah, we're living in very, I'll just say, interesting times.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's talk about the physical evidence of some of these elongated skulls and the Paracas mummies that have been found. Maybe starting with the physical differences. I know there was differences in the actual bone structure, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And look, again, this is, you sit there and you go, we went down with a team. We had a backer, a couple who donated a lot of money to us, and which enabled us to bring the team in, all the DNA testing. And what we discovered was unbelievable. No other team, in spite of what you may hear, there's no other team that we know of that did the extensive sampling that we did. We had 18 skulls from 2 different museums, 9 from a private museum, Senior Juan Navarro's Paracas History Museum, and 9 from the ICA Museum, ICA Museum. And we took around 58 samples, 56, 58 samples. Out of those samples, 28 of them sequenced, and we discovered that the mitochondrial DNA, which stems from the maternal line, the female side of the equation, showed, in many cases, a Middle Eastern origin, including the Druze, go figure, or Eastern European. Now, what is that doing in Peru? And immediately the academics, it's contaminated. Well, we want to have more stuff tested. They won't even test it. They won't even get near us. Why? Because they're afraid of the results. Because it completely overturns the entire paradigm. So what do? It's contaminated. Excuse me, if it was contaminated, then why didn't we get nuclear DNA? If I contaminated it, and I contaminated one sample, and it was thrown out, because we took my DNA, we took Mondo's DNA. We were the people that were right over the thing. And we were completely dressed in lab suits, hoods, glasses, masks. Dr. Fauci would have loved it. Mask, total lab suit, shoes, the whole thing. And we changed out of that one lab suit after every single skull that came in. So, our in the field protocol was very stringent. It's all on film. And it rewrites history. It does. It flipping rewrites history, and the academics don't care because they didn't do it. Because I'm not degreed. I don't have a degree in archaeology, but I know I work with archaeologists. I study. I bone up. I read stuff. So, and then I'm looking at the evidence because I have no axe to grind, because I'm not seated at a museum someplace, and if I go against the standard protocol, I will lose my job. That ain't going to happen. So I can speak the truth. And all we're doing is we're regurgitating, presenting what the evidence showed. We're not interpreting it because there's no interpretation. The machine spits out the data. That's what it does. You put the sample in, you shake it a couple of times, you press the button, you wait a little bit. Here it comes. Here's the results. It doesn't care about my worldview, my ideology, my ideology. It doesn't care about what I believe, what I don't believe. It could care less. It's a mindless, goofy machine that's been programmed to look at this, and then it spits out the data. It has no axe to grind, but the academics have an axe to grind. So what's amazing about this is the data showed conclusively, not all, but many of the samples had a Middle Eastern haplogroup or an Eastern European haplogroup. That rewrites history. And I'm standing by that. I know what our team went through. And when I was down in Peru last time, 2019, the Peruvian archaeologist, I'll spare him and won't mention his name. He threw me under the bus. We were there at one of the museums. Again, I'm trying to keep everybody anonymous. We were there at one of the museums, and I said, so-and-so, tell the director, you got the evidence. And he said in Spanish, so I have to have an interpreter. Oh, all their samples were contaminated. And I about fell out of my chair. No, all of our samples were not contaminated. You just didn't like the results because it didn't point to indigenous Peruvian people. It pointed to people from the Middle East. And you don't want to hear that. But that's my hypothesis, that 3,500 years ago, when Joshua and Caleb pressed the conquest of the Promised Land, these Nephilim tribes were there. And they fled to Levant. They fled westward. And this is what is so cool about lost civilizations, because we're on the trail of the Nephilim. We're connecting the dots, man. We really are. And it's mind-blowing when you think about it. But they don't like that. Because,
No.
and what's interesting is the Paracas people show up on the shores of Paracas, right? Out of nowhere. 3,500 years ago. It fits the timeline perfectly. I remember talking to a researcher, Brian Forrester, who was down there, and Brian was going, yeah, we're really kind of miffed because we had just got the carbon dating back, and it's only like 3,500 years old. And I looked at Brian and I said, wow, that fits the timeline perfectly. And he looked at me and he goes, what do you mean fits the timeline perfectly? And I said, well, my hypothesis is these are Nephilim. These are not normal human beings. These are hybrid entities that fled the Levant, fled the Promised Land 3,500 years ago when Joshua and Caleb pressed the conquest of the land. And sure enough, lo and behold, guess what? The carbon dating comes back 3,400 years, fits the timeline perfectly, absolutely perfectly. Because they're not jumping on a plane, landing in Paracas. Hi, we're here. They have to sail over there, and that may have taken a while. And the morphological differences, the structural differences in the elongated skulls are such that there's no doubt in my mind, that what we are looking at is another species. It's not a human being. It's something else. And I mean, I'll just give you some quick pointers. The orbits,
Sure.
the eye sockets are 30% larger than a human being. The pupillary distance, instead of being about 62, 65 millimeters, is about 45 millimeters. So the pupils are closer together. The sockets are larger, which means that this thing probably could see in the dark. It has no parietal suture. Normal human beings have a suture which goes from the top of the frontal plate back to the occipital plate, which splits the parietals in two. So it's a sagittal suture right up on top. They don't have one. The skull is incredibly elongated. The kicker, and this is the work of Rick Woodward, our anthropologist on the team, and he's the one that discovered it. No matter what you hear, it was Rick Woodward. Nobody else. It was Rick Woodward. He's the guy that discovered it, okay? And the foramen magnum is the brain's hole in the base of the skull where the spinal column comes up and all the cabling, I'm joking, but all the cables connect to the brain. I mean, whoever made this human body, and in my opinion, is God of the Bible, the design is flipping off the hook, all right? So all the cables go up through we need some rewiring done here, Harry. All the cables come up through the foramen magnum. Well, the foramen magnum should be, looking for a prop here. If this is my skull, the foramen magnum should be here. Should be in the center of my skull. Not back here, right here. Should be in the center. So my skull can balance like this. All right. The foramen magnum on the Paracas skulls is all the way back here. Is all the way to the occipital. Let's say this is the end of the skull right here, and I'm going to go off camera. So right there, right. So the foramen magnum in a normal human being is here. The foramen magnum for the Paracas people is here. Almost. Oh, if it's any further back, it's outside the skull. And when we saw that, and ours was the first film crew ever. We show it in episode 6, the DNA of On the Trail of a Nephilim. Once again, here we go, folks. It's all there. It's going to binge watch it. I'm telling you right now, you'll sit there and go, oh my gosh, you'll freak out. You will totally freak out because nobody's doing this. We're the only film crew that's doing it. So anyway, so we're in the Inca Museum, and we're there, and I go with the archaeologist. The museum's closed down, and I go, can we look at the Chongo skull? We want to examine it. And, you know, we had given a little donation to the museum, and we're taking DNA samples. And so the director goes, yes. So there's nobody there. They go into the room, they turn on all the lights. I can't even believe this is happening, right? And they roll out the display case. They push the display case out, slide back the glass doors, and one of the women there reaches in and picks up the skull. And I'm just sitting there going, this is the iconic elongated skull. This is the one that's all over the place. But we, you know, Brian Forrester got it on the map, but we took the ball from there. And it's in episode 6. And it's a mind blower. So she brings the skull out and she holds it like this, right? And then Mondo, who speaks pretty good Spanish, goes like this, you know, turn it upside down. We want to see where the foramen magnum is. So she slowly rotates the skull, and you hear me go on film, oh my God, it's all the way in the back. The foramen magnum, Chris, is pushed so far back to the occipital. If it's any further back, it's outside the skull. And you can't do this by creating pressures on the head. You can't relocate the foramen magnum from here to here. You can't do that. The foramen magnum is set in vitro, okay? In vitro. So whatever this is, we are looking at a genetic anomaly which is indigenous or very prevalent in the Paracas people. And again, it all fits, in my opinion, the 3,500-year timeline. It fits, and we know this is something else. One of the Nephilim tribes was called the Horites, which means cave dwellers, which means they could see in the dark. These aren't giants, but I got to tell you, man, I mean, you know, they must have looked really freaky, is what I'm saying. They did not look normal.
Now, I want to go back to the DNA you mentioned for a moment. This, you know, so it would indicate that they were able to travel across the planet somehow. Do you think that would also indicate that this was like a global species of beings that were all over the planet?
Well, this is the thing. We have found evidence at Norba, Italy, Gilgal Raphaim in Israel, of course, Göbekli Tepe, in my opinion, Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. The island of Malta, the island of Gozo, absolutely. The Hypogeum on the island of Malta, give me a break. Gozo, the megaliths there are insane how big they are. Menga, Spain. This western expansion like this, the island of Crete. I mean, it's absolutely everywhere. Majorca, Minorca. Then it goes up into France and Karnak. It's everywhere. And then it comes over here. And instead of building in stone, they're building these huge earthen mounds. And we see one of those mounds at the Salisbury Plain. And we haven't done anything with the film, but I'm standing in front of a mound. I'm looking at the camera and I go, am I in Ohio or somewhere else? Like this. And we are not in Ohio. We are in the UK. We are in the Salisbury Plain in England, not in Ohio. And if I took an archaeologist and I blindfolded him and I drugged him so he was asleep for 2 days, didn't know where he was, right? And then I unblindfolded him and here he is. He's sitting here looking at the mound. I go, hey, where are we? And he would look at the mound in front of him and he'd go, well, judging by this mound, we have to be in the States somewhere, maybe Ohio someplace, right? unless, of course, he knew the Salisbury Plain. But I mean, my point is this: where does it come from? Where does the city of Corral, the oldest city in the Americas, 5,000 years old, where does that come from? There's no pre-existing culture. There's no fortification. They're not afraid. They're not afraid of being robbed or killed or the women raped and carted off, slaves. No, they're not afraid. No walls, nothing like that. Cities open, pyramids everywhere, knowledge of the procession, equinoxes, and they're obsessed with this just as they always are. Oldest city in America, 5,000 years. 5,000 years. It predates everything. It predates everything. And there's no pre-existing culture. Chris, the mathematics, the engineering, the knowledge of solar precession, the knowledge of the 18 and a half year lunar cycle, it's all there. And there's no pre-existing culture. Zippo. So where did it come from? And in the film, I go, you know, did it just fall out of the sky? And I pause a little bit, and then I go, or maybe that's exactly what happened. Maybe it did just fall out of the sky. In the idea behind that, maybe a fallen angel came down. Now, why do I say that? Because the book of Enoch tells us that's exactly what happened before the flood. The fallen angels came down and they taught mankind a whole list of things, knowledge of the solar system, how to kill the embryo in the womb. That's the first abortion. Show the women how to use cosmetics to make themselves prettier. Where's all this come from? Mathematics, all this stuff. It comes from the fallen angels. Read the book of Enoch. And so why should we be surprised when it happens over in Corral? Why is anyone going, oh my gosh, I'm not sure how this, but we believe, I believe, that this is Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. That's what it is.
That's very interesting. To think that these beings could have, basically created this, from their own powers or whatever they were using, extreme technology, whatever they had at that time. And earlier you mentioned that the particular skulls you were working with weren't giants. Where do the giants come in? Are they of relation to these Nephilim, to the elongated skull beings?
There's different names of tribes. The Zanzumim, which means the buzzing ones. The Anakim, which means long neck. Horites, which means cave dweller. So there's all these different names for Nephilim tribes, all pointing to what appears to be certain genetic aberrations. Goliath certainly was a Nephilim, all right? I believe he was around maybe 10, 12 feet tall. Og, the king of Bashan, the last of the Rephaim. That's why it's so important, Gilgal Rephaim. The last of the Rephaim was around 13 to 14 feet tall, maybe even a little taller. So you get giantism. Some of these guys were really big. Others were just freaky looking, like the Anakim is called the long necks. That's what I was translated. So Anakim Skywalker, think about that, right? Anakim Skywalker, what the heck? They know what they're doing, but I digress. So Anakim means long neck. When you got a skull that's elongated like this, and you've got, I'm out in California, so I don't have any props. They're coming in next week in the container. So a normal skull, let's say, would look like this, and there's the spinal column with the foramen magnum, right? It's dead center. It's dead center of the skull, right there. Well, these are elongated, and now it's back here like this. So in order to make it work, in order to make it so,
I think you're muted. I can't hear you anymore.
I'm sorry. In order to balance the skull, you would have to have a longer neck. You'd have to have a longer neck. And we've got X-rays of some of the Paracas mummies, and it appears to be that the neck is longer. It appears to be. This is what drives me nuts. More research needs to be done. We're willing to do it, but the Peruvian government, I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's just, what can I say? With all due respect.
I can imagine the pushback that you'd get, from the Peruvian government. especially when it comes to examining some of these ancient sites. Now, you found a 9-footer in Catalina, right?
That's my research. Other people have taken my research and they make their goofy little YouTube videos and they get, 1 million or 2 million hits, and I get like 50,000. How does that work, right?
Right.
But it's all okay. It's my discovery. It's my intellectual property. I went out and I'm the guy that did the research on the photograph. Nobody else did. I did it. What I mean by that is we got 3 people that looked at the picture and then were able to, based on the figure in the picture, who was 5'8", Ralph Glidden, they were able to ascertain that the skeleton in front was about a 9-footer. Now, the backstory is this. I heard from Jim Watson, who wrote a book called Mysterious Catalina. He talked about Ralph Glidden, this archaeologist who was hired by the Hay Museum. The Hay Museum later got gobbled up by the Smithsonian, but he was hired by the Hay to go out and do primitive archaeological digs. Okay. And his records went missing for 50 years. Well, they found the records, and Jim told me about this. So I emailed the curator of the museum, and I said, listen, I'd like to come out and look at the artifacts. Well, Mr. Marzulli, I'm sorry, you can't. This went on for 6 months. And then Jim said, look, they're building a new museum. Why don't you offer a donation? So I offered $1,000 donation. Come right in, Mr. Marzulli. That's the way it works. So I did. A friend of mine is a flight instructor. So I flew from the mainland out to Catalina, and I got to fly the plane, which was really a hoot. Little two-seater. It was just absolutely like a go-kart in the air. It's just hysterical, right? And then on the way back, he let me take off. I actually took off with the plane. He told me how to do it. I'm sitting there, he goes, okay, pull back, push the throttle down, let's go. And up we went. And then I circled the island like this,
Nice.
And then flew back to Los Angeles. It was really, really a hoot. I got pictures of that.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah, it was really a blast. So I'm there at the museum, and then the curator, who was fired, by the way, shortly after, asked me what I wanted to see. I said, well, let me see the photographs first. So he goes into a vault, big old bank vault, walk-in bank vault, right? And he brings out the photographs, these museum boxes. And I open up the museum boxes, and everything has been cataloged very neatly, longhand or nice fine printing, Glidden pictures, Catalina Island, 1919. Open it up. I start thumbing through the pictures. Now, most of the time when you're in an archive like this, you don't see anything. It's very rare. I mean, you can spend a lot of hours in the archive. For example, in Wisconsin, I spent 3 days in the archives. I didn't find doodly squat. Nothing. Well, that's not true. I found the hand drawings of, this is a rabbit trail, of the Phillips brothers, who claimed 9-foot, 10-foot giants that they uncovered at the mound at Lake Delavan. And they drew them. And the archaeologist is going, no, they're just a bone pile. They're not giants, blah, blah, blah. And they're writing back going, no, you don't understand. They're not disarticulated. Their knees are up like this. They're huge. They got elongated skulls, and they're in situ, and they're all facing east. Hello? And this goes back and forth. So, I mean, I was all over that, like white on rice. I spent 2 weeks up there, 3 days in the archives. I went to Delavan and spent a week there. I mean, it was unbelievable. But circling back to Catalina, so all of a sudden there's a picture with what appears to be a 6-fingered skeleton. Then there's a more of an adult and a child. The child has a very elongated skull. So does what appears to be a woman, I guess, in situ in a grave. Finally, and there's no reference point to any of these things. There's no like ruler or anything like that. So you don't know really, what am I looking at? But finally we get pay dirt. Ralph Glidden, who's the archaeologist, is leaning on a shovel. In front of him is a recently excavated grave. In that grave is a skeleton in situ. It's not a pile of bones. The skeleton is there. The skull is enormous. The skull is absolutely humongous. And so, thanks to Gary Stearman, Gary said, LA, there are people who can digitize this, and we know the height of Ralph Goodman was 5'8". They can figure out where the camera was, the distance between Ralph and the skeleton, and they can tell you how big it is. So I put the ad on my blog. I had three people who volunteered for it. There was no collusion between them at all, no collusion. And basically what happened was when they gave me the results, they all put the skeleton at just over 9 feet. And then I introduced them to each other, and they had a field day because they didn't know there were 3 people working on it. They thought they were the only people working on it. I said, oh, and by the way, there's 2 other people who came up with the same conclusion you did. So they all exchanged emails and Skyped and all this other stuff. So I published that photograph in my book, On the Trail of the Nephilim, Volume 1. It went viral. And, other people have stolen it. The History Channel did a thing in Search of the Lost Giants with the Vieira brothers, but they brought me on to talk about it. Now you go on YouTube and you have these people, the Catalina giant. And sometimes you actually hear me from one of our Watchers films talking in the background, but there's never like, oh, and by the way, that's L.A. Marzulli's property. He's the guy that discovered it. But I need clickbait, and thank you for supporting my YouTube channel.
Right. That's ridiculous.
Oh, can't we have this for free, LA? So that's the way things are done in modernity. But it doesn't really matter because the truth eventually comes out one way or the other. People find out. That's my work, and I thank Gary Stearman. See, I'm passing the ball. Gary Stearman was the one who said someone can digitize that photograph and tell you and analyze it. So there you go. Thank you, Gary, elder brother. So, without Gary Stearman, I might never have done that. So hats off to Gary. But we did it, and we published the evidence. And when we published the evidence, the museum freaked out, and they took the picture that I had discovered in the archives. They took the picture, which was a 5x7 black and white, and blew it up maybe 18 inches high, 2 feet, 2.5 feet wide, really big, and plastered it on the wall. And underneath it was this whole article about what a scumbag Ralph Goodman was. So when we went back to the museum, there was the picture. But what they had done is they redacted the giant skeleton out of the picture. It wasn't there. It was just Ralph Goodman holding on to his shovel. There's no skeleton. It's cropped.
Wow.
And I look at the new curator because the old curator got fired after my interview, right? After I was allowed to go back on the island. I said, why did you guys crop the photograph? And she said, we didn't crop it. I don't know. This is just what I got. I was told to put this up. Managed agenda, anyone? Science. I just love it. We're told, and this is what, if I can just leapfrog. So you got Dr. Fiasco, Dr. Fauci. Everybody's going to have to wear a mask for the next 12 years at least until we figure out what's going on here. I want everybody to wear 5 masks, 2 on your mouth, 2 on each ear, and maybe 2 on the eyes. Oh, that's 6. Sorry. 6 masks because the virus is very tricky. And and that's what we're going to have to do here. There's never going to be normal, and that's how it is. Thank you, Dr. Fiasco. So let me get this straight. So they cropped the giant out of the picture. The museum, which stands for science, the truth. We just go where the science leads us. BS. No, you don't. You have a managed agenda. It's your flippin' religion. Don't give me this crap. We know exactly what you guys do. You obfuscate, and blatantly bald-faced lie about all sorts of stuff. In the Catalina Museum, there's proof of the pudding. So when we published the redacted picture, that went viral. And since then, bully for the museum, they now take the picture that I discovered. They've blown it up. It's like 3x4. It's huge. It's huge. It's on the museum wall. And they show Ralph, but there's not a word about what you're looking at. Not a word. You would think if I were the museum director, come and see the giant discovered on Catalina. Does this rewrite history? Right. Is this just a freak of nature or something else? Whoa, the public The public, the lines to the museum would be around the block. Are you kidding me? Are you flipping kidding me? But no, we can't do that, LA, because that might point to the supernatural worldview. Oh, and then maybe because it's the supernatural, maybe there's the God of the Bible who's a supernatural God. Oh my gosh, now what do we do? So that's what's at stake. I'm having fun tonight. Thanks, Chris.
That's good. That's good. Now, I definitely want to save time to get into what's going on with modern day ufology and everything in the mainstream. But before we get to that, do you think that it's possible that there are bloodlines of these Nephilim that are still around today?
More than likely. That's a very slippery slope. Very slippery slope. But more than likely, yeah. Short answer, yeah. Can I prove it? No. People have had encounters with hybrid entities, which I would say are modern day Nephilim. But you know what? I'm just one guy. I've seen stuff. I've been in a lot of places, but I'm just one guy, and a lot of information comes through our little gateway here. But it's hard to say. But it's a very slippery slope.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it is. Now, when it comes to modern day ufology, last year and the years before, I'd say the past 3 years, it's really picked up. We've had a Muamua, the Tic Tac, New York Times article, the Israeli space commander talking about a galactic federation. Who knows what's coming up this year and beyond? What do you think is going on? Do you think this is preparation, disinformation, or planned? What do you think?
This is a managed agenda, Chris. I have an insider who's in one of the alphabet agencies. I call him the Osprey. He wrote me yesterday and he said, this reveal had nothing to do with the present administration. It was set in place in the last administration. And this current administration has nothing to do with it. They don't even know what's being released. The bottom line is, it is a managed agenda, as the late Chuck Missler would say. The information is being slowly trickled out. It's alarming. When you've got people like Marco Rubio stating that the craft are there, they can do stuff. We want to get to the bottom of it. You've got one of the former guys from the Trump administration talking about that when this information comes out, it's going to change the global paradigm. Well, yeah, I've been saying that for years. It's exactly what's going to happen. That when this thing finally gets revealed, it will change life as we know it completely in every way, shape, and form. And we're gearing up for it. In fact, it's at the point where it's really speeding up. It's alarming how it's being sped up. Alarming.
So when it comes to the abduction phenomenon, where people have accounts of being taken on ships and they have these experiments being done and they see insect creatures, they see possibly hybrid children, there's fertility experiments going on, gray beings, reptilians, things like that. What do you think is going on? Do you think this is all these interdimensional entities, possibly playing tricks and putting false images in our minds or something like that? What do you think is going on?
Well, it's a mixed bag. They have the ability to change their appearance. They can transform into pretty much anything that they want to. The Greek word for this is metaschismata, the ability to transform into pretty much anything that they want to. They can appear as your dead grandmother if they want to. They can do that. So insectoids, reptoids, all this stuff. I mean, we don't know. They're highly malevolent. When I spoke at the last conference, or the only conference last year that we actually did was one that George Norrie was hosting up in Big Bear Lake in California. And I was one of the speakers, which was a real honor. And because, I'm an outsider. Nick Redfern was there, Nick Pope was there, Michael Barrow was there. Those are all regulars on Ancient Aliens. And then me. So I'm the outsider. And I spoke at length for several hours, twice. The second time I really went both barrels, spoke probably for 2 hours nonstop. And when I started, the people came, after 15 minutes, people came out of the kitchen. When I started, there were people over at the bar, were chatting it up. After 15 minutes, you could hear a pin drop in the room. And I challenged the audience, and I said, let me ask you something. How many of you think it's okay to abduct a 5-year-old kid against his parents' permission and not only abduct them, but implant them? How many of you think that that's an okay thing? Not one hand went up. I said, well, you've just proven my whole lecture. I could stop right now because it's malevolent. None of you think that this is a good thing, and yet you're always making excuses why it's a good thing. But when the question is posed to you, is it okay to abduct a 5-year-old and implant them against their parents' wishes? You say, oh, well, no, it's not okay. Well, why is that? Why is it that you know instantly that it's not okay? Well, welcome to Bill, who was abducted when he was 5 years old and implanted. And that's the implant that we actually took out in Watchers 8, Watchers 7, Watchers 8. We show it. We're one of the few film crews to have ever actually done that from start to finish. And it's there in the film, which is incredible. Absolutely incredible. When I talked about implants, Chris, I was laughed at by my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. I was laughed at. Marzulli's gone off the deep end now. He's talking about alien implants. Oh my gosh. Maybe he needs a checkup from a neck up. So once we showed that on film, dead silence. Where are your retractors now? Where are the people jumping up and down going, this is all delusion? Well, it ain't delusion. It's real. There's a breeding program. And I believe that these implants are actually the precursors, the prototypes to the so-called mark of the beast that we read about in the book of Revelation, which is very, very alarming, if true, extremely alarming. But they're there. It's real. It's happening. I had a woman email me tonight, talked about she's being targeted, blah, blah, blah. She's been implanted. I said, get the x-ray. First thing you need to do is get an x-ray. If it doesn't show up on x-ray, then you're not implanted. That's how that works. Then it's all up here.
Now, what do you think's going on the other side of the spectrum when it comes to contact experiences, where people are having, these beautiful experiences where they're, it's all love and light, and they're getting messages from these extraterrestrials about, how we need to save the planet and all this stuff. Do you think that's just another deception from these beings?
Yeah, absolutely. They lie. I mean, Jacques Vallée and J. Alec Hynek, Hynek's not here, but Jacques Vallée is. Jacques Vallée's book, Messages of Deception. He said it, not me. He may have changed his tune. I don't know.
Right.
I've tried to reach out to him several times. It never gets back to me. But why write a book entitled Messages of Deception? Why does J. Allen Hynek say that these entities, wherever they're from, they habitually lie? They do so. I mean, this is what they do. They lie all the time. Abductees do the same thing. Well, I remember talking to Blossom Goodchild. She's an experiencer and channeler. I said, Blossom, they told you on October 14th that they were going to materialize. And you asked them, and they told you over and over again. And the entire planet, those of us that follow you, and people that were looking at this, we're all sure that it was going to happen, and it didn't happen. Why? And she couldn't bring herself to say that she had been lied to. She wouldn't go that far. She couldn't understand why it hadn't happened. And I said, Blossom, this is all in a sit-down interview I did with her in my book, Further Evidence, which is out of print. We need to reprint that book. But the bottom line is, Blossom Goodchild just said, I don't know. I don't know why they assured me it was going to happen, and at the last minute, it didn't happen. Well, that's their calling card. That's what they do. They'll lead you on, lead you on, lead you on, lead you on, only to have the bottom drop out. They're evil, in my opinion.
Do you think that there are factions of our military and government that possess some of this technology, as you put it, fallen angel technology?
Absolutely, all day long. No doubt. No doubt.
You think that's a lot of what we're seeing in the sky, actually?
We're seeing both. Some are, some aren't. The tic-tac shaped object, that's one of theirs. The triangular ones, that's one of ours, in my opinion.
Right, yeah, the TR3. I was actually watching a a little documentary about that earlier. Do you think it's possible that we would have some sort of fake invasion, that our government or some faction would stage something to kind of, I don't know, we've seen crazier things happen in the past couple of years. It seems like this would be on par with what's happening. Do you think that could be in the cards?
Yeah, that's Project Bluebeam, and it certainly is in the cards. It certainly is something um, which they could drum up. Absolutely. On the other hand, with look, it's a managed agenda. They're pushing this thing forward. So who's doing it and why? I think full disclosure is sooner than we think. Much sooner. Might be this year. I'm not a date setter, but the way it's going, and at some point, I honestly believe that some guy from the military will be on Tucker Carlson, because that seems to be a clearinghouse for all this. Some guy will be on Tucker Carlson and he'll go, well, we have footage from the Roswell 1947 crash, and we felt like we had to cover this up, and we deliberately misled the American people, but now we're setting the record straight. And here are the colored videos that we took of the debris field, along with the saucer, the craft here. And this is what these entities look like. 3 of them or 4 of them were dead. 2 of them were alive, or whatever the number is. That depending on who you talk to, right? But anyway, here are the dead ones. Here are the live ones. We tried to make communication with them. Blah 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 blah. We're able to back engineer some of the technology that they use. We did do a quid pro quo with President Eisenhower, and there was a treaty that was signed where they had access to the population. They gave us the technology, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's going to happen at some point. That's really the next rung on the disclosure ladder. We're on rung number 6 right now. I think rung number 7, 8, 9. Hard to say which one it is, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, there's some crazy stuff happening every day, and it keeps getting weirder. Now, to close out tonight, when I first started doing this, I had hopes that modern academia would someday take a second look at, some of this evidence, like the Paracas mummies and the skulls. Now, with all the cancel culture and every crazy thing that's happening, I definitely don't see that happening. Would you agree? Do you think it's, modern, you can just give up on modern academia when it comes to this shit?
Well, yeah. I mean, modern academia and the whole cancel culture thing, I'm a white guy. So right off the bat, I've got 3 strikes because I'm a white guy, and I'm privileged. Everything, my whole life, I didn't make that according to Obama. And, just because I'm white, that's how I got here. Never mind the late nights, burning the candle at both ends, reinventing myself, and moving forward. That has nothing to do with it. Now, you got there, LA, because you're just a white guy. The road was paved for you. That's how it happened. Somebody gave you $500,000 because you're a white guy. It's the biggest bunch of hooey. And we can get in a lot of trouble, but with what I'm going to say next, because it'll sound like an incredibly racist statement. But the pushback from sane people should be, where does the modern world come from? Just okay, let's cancel white guys are bad. Just tell me, where does the modern world come from? Who invented the airplane? Who invented refrigeration? Who invented the telephone, the telegraph? I mean, I can sit here all day long. Who invented the automobile? Who invented the skyscraper? Who invented the mass production lines? Who invented telephone cables? I mean, it's just like, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. But we got to cancel those white guys because they're privileged. Look, what happened here in America was people came over. And was there discrimination? Heck yeah. But there's discrimination in every other country on the planet. Thank you. Don't believe me? Go to Brazil as a white guy. Go into the market and see the looks you get, because you're a white guy, okay? And he wants to see cancel culture. But we all came here because we had liberty and freedom. We had freedom. We weren't enslaved. We weren't serfs. We had liberty to pursue whatever we wanted to pursue. So you get these 2 crazy guys who were bicycle guys. They make bicycles. Most of us know them, Wilbur and Orville. And they're down there in Kitty Hawk, and they're messing around. What do you think, Orville? I don't think it's going to work. I got to get these wings right. and they're screwing around with this stuff. They're making bicycles by day, but on the weekends they're fighting around with this airplane thing, and no one's ever flown before, right? And guess what? It pays off. They make it work. I mean, are you kidding me? Are you flipping kidding me? Freedom and liberty. That's what America is all about. And so now what we've got is, well, we need an Asian in there or a Latino in there. Well, what about on the merit of who and what you are and what you've achieved? What about that? Not about what you look like, because that shouldn't matter at all. It's about what you've achieved as an individual, as a man or a woman. That's what's important. That should give you, well, this guy over here, look what he did. Look at his resume. Look what he did. Look what he discovered. I don't care what color he is. Sounds good to me. Let's hire the guy. But we don't have that. Now we need more Latinos. We need a transgender. Are they qualified? No, but we need one anyway.
They've done a great job of dividing people. That has been one of the major agendas. Yeah, it's pretty sad what they've done. But LA, I want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. It was fantastic information. Before you head out, let everyone know where they can find your work, the easiest way, websites, or if you have social media, stuff like that.
Yeah, the website is lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net, Marzulli. All the films. What are you waiting for? I don't want to spend $25. LA, this stuff should be free. Get a job. So here's the deal. Go to streaming.lamarzulli.net and binge watch all of them for under $25, all 6 episodes. I mean, are you kidding me? You won't be able to buy Starbucks for 2 days. Sorry. Binge watch them. Learn something. We're out in the field, and what we're uncovering is absolutely mind-boggling. There is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. So lamarzulli.net, those are the books, hard copies, the DVDs, streaming.lamarzulli.net. What can I tell you?
Awesome. LA, thank you so much again for coming on. That was fantastic information. We barely scratch the surface every time. We'd love to have you back on in the future. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening.